Struggling to conceive after a vasectomy reversal and feeling like you've tried everything? What if the missing piece is your gut? In this episode, I sit down with best-selling author and fertility expert Aimee Raupp to unpack the powerful connection between gut health, inflammation, and sperm and egg quality. If your labs are quote-unquote normal, but you're still not pregnant, this conversation is the eye-opener you've been waiting for. We talk about what doctors aren't testing, how stress and diet are silently impacting your fertility, and simple shifts that could really change everything. Feeling like this whole baby-making journey is never going to work out? You've done it all, diet changes, supplements, tracking your cycle, and yet the pregnancy test is negative. It's so frustrating, and you're asking yourself, why isn't this happening for us? I'm Susan Gladstein, a holistic fertility coach and mom to 7, including 2 miracle babies after a vasectomy reversal, and I get it. Being told everything looks fine by doctors while still feeling stuck can leave you feeling hopeless and confused. On this podcast, I'll share practical, natural ways to support your fertility without all the overwhelm. Forget the everything's normal talk and the rush to fertility treatments. I'm here to show you a better way. If you're ready to take practical steps that fit with God's plan for your family, you're in the right place. I truly believe that you can have the baby you've been praying for. I am so thrilled because my guest has so much wisdom to share with each of you. I first discovered her through her book, Yes, You Can Get Pregnant, Natural Ways to Improve Your Fertility Now and Into Your 40s. And there was one mantra, like even just in the intro of the book, that really stuck out to me as I was reading it. And something I'd like to share with my own clients. And that's, you must believe in your fertility more than you don't believe in it.
Yeah.
And that simple but powerful mindset shift really resonated with me. And I know that she's going to have so many valuable insights to share with us today. So not only is she a best-selling author and acupuncturist, she's also the creator of a fertility-friendly beauty line and has helped countless women improve their fertility through holistic strategies. So thank you so much for joining me. I'd love for you to just share a little bit more about what drew you into this work and how you became passionate about supporting women on their fertility journey.
Sure. Well, thank you, first of all, Susan, for having me. I appreciate it so much. Um, yeah, so, long story short, I didn't really pick it. I didn't come out of grad school saying, "Oh, I want to work with fertility." I actually really just wanted to focus on general medicine. Um, Backstory to becoming an acupuncturist, I'm a medical school dropout, so I have my undergrad in biology and in chemistry, and I've always been a bit of a science nerd and really enjoy data points, and that kind of came through as I was a practitioner, out of acupuncture school, and I just started seeing a lot of women. That's mainly who come, seek alternative medicine. At least back then, 20 years ago. Now I think it's a lot more mainstream, but. And women had period problems, women had hormonal problems, acne problems, GI problems, getting pregnant problems, right? So I just started seeing that over and over again. And I think the science part of me, who's a practitioner now of this energy medicine, really got, like, I liked to look at the labs. I like to see things shift. And obviously I always say pregnancy is a very clear end result. Like, you're either doing it or you're not, and so I think it kind of got me hooked, where I was like, ooh, this, felt really, not to underestimate what women are going through to get there, but for me it was fun, to see the transformation, not only in the subjective, and objective measures that I would use as a practitioner of Chinese medicine, but then also to see the lab work shift, and obviously to see that positive pregnancy test. But always, for me, it was always still rooted in, if you will, general practice. It was always rooted in the whole body, and that's the beauty of Chinese medicine, is we're looking at every piece and how it all fits together. and including that mental emotional piece. So kind of to what I said in the beginning of yes, you can get pregnant, which I'm like knee deep in revisions on that book. So I'm very aware of that mantra in there. And also then went on to write a book about called Body Belief, right, which is all about our beliefs and how they impact our behavior, which ultimately impact our health, and so much of the neuroscience research behind that. But yeah, I just started to really see clearly that the disconnect was not about fertility per se, but like looking to the root cause. And so that's always still been my primary focus, is like root cause medicine, if you will. And then it just translated for me into helping women with fertility. And writing the books really was just a way to kind of, I guess, obviously get my voice out there. But I just had so many thoughts and so many things to say about the subject matter that then I started writing the books. And that's what, Yes, You Can't Get Pregnant was my second book, but that's the book that really put me on the map as someone helping women get and stay pregnant. And at first that was just clinical practice in my clinics in New York City and Rockland County. And then, it's grown into an online fertility coaching business, and we reach women everywhere, and it's amazing.
It's such a good book. So if you have not read it, and I don't know when your revision's coming
They'll
out,
be
but
out in early 2026.
okay,
So,
so
so yeah,
definitely
I
need to
mean,
get that.
yeah, it's a good book. And and I'm revamping, what I would say I'm super proud of, looking at something that I wrote literally almost 12 years ago. I'm super proud of everything I said in there. It still completely holds true from my perspective. There's nuances now that I think I want to just add in, and there's content that I didn't go deep enough on miscarriages or on endometriosis or autoimmunity and like nervous. I talked a lot about beliefs and of course gut health, and of course like inflammation and egg quality, and all the things. But I'm going to go even deeper into things that we know even more about. But I was talking back then about epigenetics, I was talking about environmental toxins, I was talking about microbiome, and all the things that are hot topics now in the space of fertility. So I still think, to your point, it's still a very good book, and I think really valuable to own, and the revision will just be more, if you will.
I love that. And as someone who also was like a biology pre-med person in school and was I realized later I ended up going into the military and doing public relations, but I realized later I wasn't really cut out for that. But my whole life I wanted to be a doctor. And now I feel like I have the opportunity to like help prevent people instead of just
Yeah.
like treating something. It's like really it's such a different thing when you look at it from a holistic perspective than just sort of Western medicine. And I think that's what a lot of my clients are struggling with because when they go in, a lot of the information that doctors have, a lot of times is very outdated. It's not very specific and it doesn't look at the holistic perspective, which is why I'm so passionate about advocating for that because it makes such a difference. But one of the things that I don't know. I know for sure, like, I never, in all the years that I had issues with gut health, I never once was asked by a doctor, like, what I ate, how much water did I drink, how much sleep did I get, or any of that stuff. And I find that that's not even a question that fertility practitioners, like, if you go to a clinic and they want to set you up with IVF, no one's asking you about your diet, your lifestyle, toxins, any of that stuff. It's just like, here, take these meds and let's do this procedure. And I wholeheartedly believe that there's so many foundational things that you can do to improve just your overall health. Because in reality, good health, like fertility is a byproduct of good health and longevity. So, how would you say gut health impacts fertility? And why do you think it's so overlooked in, conventional fertility treatments?
Well, I think, again, and too, having had quite a bit of education in under the Western medical model or system, it's super compartmentalized, right? So fertility, we're just looking at age, we're looking at FSH, AMH, antral follicle count. That's it. That's all that matters, right? I mean, they're not even really looking at the uterus that much, or immunology, which is super important when it comes to fertility. But it's, and they're not really looking at sperm that much, which I know you talk a lot about on this podcast, and it's like, oh my goodness, what are we missing? But so I think that's part of it, and not to place blame, because I have a lot of medical doctor friends and colleagues, and the utmost respect, and I fully respect IVF and Western medical interventions. Like, it's necessary for some of my patients, and it's amazing. But we can maximize results, or not even need the assisted reproductive techniques if we get to the root cause. So, my foundational training, if you will, as an acupuncturist, right, is Chinese medicine, right? I have a master's of science in traditional Chinese medicine. Chinese medicine is not just acupuncture, right? It's nutrition, it's lifestyle, it's mindset. We look at all of that, but we're always looking at health from this very macro perspective. And to us, the cornerstone of health is the spleen and the stomach, which are our digestive organs. Because if we are not basic, what we consume, if we can't take it apart into the pieces that we need, and then give what we need to our cells and our organs, and then excrete the waste, if we're not doing that properly, nothing's going to work. And we talk about consumption, not just of like foods. We talk about, what are you consuming relationship wise, environmentally, thought wise, like, what are we exposed to? All of that impacts how we absorb, how we take in our nourishment from the world. And so, I think a lot of people think about gut health, and then they think about, like, oh, probiotics and diet and nutrition, and, like, sure, of course, those things super important. But to us, the earth element, that's the spleen and the stomach, it's literally the foundation. We have to, like, take in from the outer world, process, take what we need, get rid of the rest, and be able to also, like, organize it and dispatch it to the organs that need it. And so we've always, from a Chinese medicine perspective, put gut health at the cornerstone of all health, right? If that digestive element is not working, nothing's going to succeed. And it's kind of similar to, we'll always say, you can't out supplement a crappy diet or a crappy lifestyle. So I think so many, more and more fertility doctors will talk about CoQ10, right? Because there's some good research behind it. Maybe they'll talk about vitamin D. Maybe they'll talk about omega-3 fatty acids, right? So they have some things here that they're focused on, which is great. I'm proud to see that shift happening, but not thinking macro of, like, can you even absorb this? And then also, I think even more macro, why are you 35 and you have a diminished ovarian reserve and you're not getting or staying pregnant? What, to us, right, the alternative world, the holistic side of things, the first thing we're all thinking is, her body is not prioritizing fertility because it's trying to put out another fire. What's that other fire? I got to figure out where that fire is coming from, what's going on, right? And so really understanding, like, someone I heard on a podcast recently, and someone I admire and respect, she said something like, diminished ovarian reserve can be total, or early menopause, I think she said something like that, is totally normal even at the age of 35. And I was like, no, no. And actually, nowhere in the literature does that say that. Like, I literally was like, I'm gonna call you out on this, because that's terrible information to be sharing. It is not normal. Yes, perimenopause kind of begins the second our period starts. I think, like, we're slowly moving towards that. But perimenopause is a 10-year time frame, and about, some women less, some women, more, but where hormones are shifting, but doesn't mean we can't balance them. And we're definitely still ovulating and menstruating, so we can definitely still get pregnant. But to kind of go back and say these things are normal for women is, no, that's not true. Yes, fertility declines as we age. Yes, our ovarian reserve declines as we age, but no, fertility does not fall off a cliff once we hit 35. And there's a lot of argument now too. There's one guy, Jonathan Tilley. He's out of Northwestern University. He's been doing research for 20 years, on ovarian stem cells that are actually in our ovaries and whether or not we're actually even running out of eggs. And it's not my research. I just like to share it with people of like, this stuff is going on. People are questioning these common, these dogmas. And also the original research that told us that women were running out of eggs was never even done on humans. It was done on rats and rhesus monkeys. So that's also kind of appalling that we based our knowledge on that. And we've just stuck with it. No one's questioned it since the 1960s. Fascinating to me. But yeah, so I think Western medicine just is this very compartmentalized model. These are the things, and really what they're doing is their job. But when you wind up in a fertility clinic, their main job is to understand how you're going to respond to fertility treatments. That's it. Their main job is not to figure out why you're there, which is unfortunate. And so that's our job. So it gets complicated, but it's also, my call before yours is trying to convince a patient to get further testing, but her doctors are saying she doesn't need it. So she's in a conundrum, and I feel bad for her. She trusts me, she trusts them. What does she do? But she keeps having miscarriages of normal embryos. I'm sorry, that's not normal, right?
No.
And so, but this poor patient, who's a super educated, lovely human being, is in a predicament because how does she get the care she needs if the doctors she has don't believe she actually needs that care? They're just saying donor eggs. That's what you need, even though she's making genetically normals. Not looking at the uterus. They're not looking at immunology. They didn't even run like vitamin D on her, let alone even thyroid. But they're not looking at anything else. And I feel for these clients because it's and you probably run into the same thing. I can only say what I say enough times, right? Like at some point she has to make that decision. What does she want to pursue? I'm not against donor eggs by any means, but you might just miscarry the donor embryo, unfortunately. It's probably, what, and that's what I said to her. I said, listen, you got to do what you're going to do. If you have another miscarriage, I said, I will hunt you down and find you, and I will make you get this dish. And she laughed. I was like, not that miscarriages are fun either. Not, they suck. I've been through it. I know. But anyway, it's just things get, it's just there's this box and you fall into it or you don't. And then there's this whole other world. And so I think though for the patient that's already overwhelmed and heartbroken and dealing with so much, it's hard to then say, oh, how do I find out these other things that could be wrong with me? Like, why doesn't my doctor talk about gut health? Like, do you really know what you're talking about? Or is this just more testing and more things? Like, I don't want to have to do that diet. My doctor said, pesticides or gluten or dairy or soy or whatever the thing have nothing to do with my fertility. So why should I believe you? Yeah, it's complicated, and I wish it was less divided, but it's not.
Yes, you had so many
I just went on a
so many
rampage.
things that I'm like, yes, preach, sister, preach. So for me, I was 38 when my husband had his vasectomy reversal, and I thought I was going to get pregnant right away. His numbers were amazing. It wasn't happening. And I started to think, well, surely I gave in to the like, oh, you're over 35. So, you know, I must be the problem. And the only response I got was, your labs are all normal. I don't know why you weren't. But nobody really even asked me about, like, do you understand your cycle? Do
Yeah.
you know if you're actually ovulating? Like, are you trying at the right time? And I think that for me, I didn't know then what I know now. But I will say that after a couple of, failed IUIs and meds making me super sick, and I decided I wasn't going to go that route anymore, wanted to pursue alternative things. And I had spent 2 years working on my health foundations because my gut health was terrible. I had chronic migraines and digestive problems, like all of these things. I ended up having to do a metals detox in this process. So that's why now I really advocate for the education so that my clients can ask the right questions. And if your doctor's not willing to do the labs that you're asking for, there are ways to get around that. Like, yes, it costs money, but like, what's the alternative? A $25,000 IVF bill that may or may not be successful because foundationally you don't have optimal egg and sperm quality. Your hormones are out of whack because you're stressed out about trying to conceive, all of those things, right? So I think it's really powerful to have conversations like this so that it opens your mind because, I mean, anything that I learned about the menstrual cycle was from sixth grade health class. And
Yeah.
we all know that that was not the greatest information. And even what they tell you on TV is like, oh, yeah, you get pregnant anytime. So we all grow up thinking like it'll just happen whether we want it to or not. And it's
Right.
just not the case. And so when people are struggling with that, it can be so frustrating because everything we were taught isn't necessarily accurate. I mean, even to your point of tests done about your ovarian reserve declining after 35, and that's like an antiquated test. Like I had my vasectomy reversible baby at 40, and I'm pregnant now at 44. And I'm
Mhm.
way healthier now than I was in
Yeah.
my 20s. I go
Yeah.
into the doctor at 40 and get all sorts of, your advanced maternal
I'm
age and
sure. Yeah.
so much grief. So this time I went in at 44, which by the way, when my test was positive, I actually was like, oh, I'm, I thought because I had missed my period that I was like, oh, I'm starting menopause. This is happening. And then it was like, what? I'm too old. No.
No,
But
you're not.
no. And now I'm on this quest, like, to sort of squash that, I asked my husband, like, are you willing to be like on the cover of People magazine for like the world's oldest couple to conceive naturally? And he was like, challenge accepted. But I think that's like such a thing because so many
Yeah.
of my clients are over 30, over 35, and they feel rushed,
Hmm.
but they're not given the tools to create foundationally good health that's going to
That's
make
right.
like you want to give your child the best pieces of you, the best pieces of the sperm, all of that, right? But I find that so many times that my clients are just struggling with the stress of what, like the time crunch. You
Hmm.
spent all this money, you want a baby yesterday. Doctors are no help. They're like, everything's normal. We don't know what's wrong with you. But I find that stress and inflammation is a very common
Oh,
culprit
yeah.
in a lot of hormonal imbalances that I see. Because when I look at labs, I look at them differently than what most doctors do. I'm looking for optimal fertility, not just normal ranges, because the normal is based off a population of, let's be honest, not very healthy people.
Hmm.
And they keep changing.
That's right.
Things that were 30 years ago now are considered normal, but 30 years ago, they would have
They were
said, like,
out
we
of
need to look at
range.
this some more, you know? But can you explain kind of the link between chronic inflammation and even like for egg quality, sperm quality, all of that?
Yeah, I mean, oxidative stress, that's the link, right? And so it ages us prematurely. But it also sets off like an epigenetic, I guess you would call it like cascade, right? So things that maybe we're predisposed to, right? So also, once upon a time, right? And this wasn't that long ago. I was, medical school time frame. So I was at UCSD. What is it? 2000 and maybe 2000, 99, 1999, 2000. Remember, we were mapping the genome. It was like our genes are set in stone. We're just going to map this genome and then we're going to know everything. We're going to figure out how to treat every illness, every disease. And then they start mapping the genome and they're like, oh my goodness, our genes are not set in stone. So we've been telling everyone for the last however many years, genes are set in stone. There's nothing you can do about it. You get what you're given, march on with your life. And now they're like, there's this epigenome, which basically kind of like lies above the genetics, and it switches. That's how I would see it. Methylation switches like on, off, on, off. We can turn genes on, we can turn them off. And our lifestyle, and thank you so much, Chinese medicine has been saying that for thousands of years, our lifestyle determines what gets turned on and turned off. Inflammation is a number one trigger of turning that on and turning it off, right? And so there are certain things we obviously don't want turned on, whether that's, senescent genes, like, aging us faster or slower. Obviously, want those turned on, cancer genes, endometriosis genes, right? There's all sorts of things. But, for this talk of like that inflammation, and I like to boil it down too, and I talk about this in Body Belief of like there's physical inflammation, there's also emotional inflammation, which we could just generally call stress, which is so annoying to everybody. But the mental health piece of it, or the nervous system dysregulation piece of it, really impacts our hormones as well. It impacts that HPA axis, right? Hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal axis, and that these adrenals are going to impact our hormones. One of the most common things is it's like when we're in that fight or flight constantly and we're so stressed, there's a lot of emotional inflammation, I would call it, but the the body literally starts stealing from the hormones because it's like, I need this instead, right? The progesterone steal is a very common thing. You'll see that in short luteal phases, or um, I always think, well, anyway, but you'll see the hormones, to manage the stress cascade, the body has to basically turn off certain things. And in a woman's body, the first thing that gets shut down is the reproductive system, because it says, I don't have the resources. I am barely getting by. I need to take everything I can. And so this system, goodbye, bye bye. You'll see anovulation, you'll see short luteal phases, you'll see you just decrease hormones overall, right? Lower estrogen, FSH goes up. So inflammation plays a role, I think, on multiple levels, right? We know it's impacting ovarian health. I'm sorry, egg quality. We know it's impacting sperm quality. It also is triggering the immune system to act funky. And so that's the immune system's super important when it comes to fertility, right? Implantation is all about the immune system and the uterine environment, of course, uterine microbiome, the cavity itself needs to be healthy and free of scar tissue and all that. But the immune system plays a tremendous part. And inflammation is triggering a different immune response. I don't want to say stronger, I don't want to say weaker, because it's not always what it is. It's just, instead of it saying, yeah, I'll totally take this embryo that's half not me. No, now, sorry, I can't take that because I'm told that nothing should be in here that's not me. And so we start rejecting the embryo, we're rejecting the sperm, we're creating antibodies to our own ovaries, right? There's inflammation sets off the whole autoimmune cascade, and you probably agree, and we see it all the time clinically when we start digging into our cases, our unexplained infertility cases, and I put that in quotations because it's a bullshit diagnosis, and it just means your doctor's lazy. Um, I'd say 80% of unexplained infertility is actually on a low line, mismanaged, undermanaged, not managed at all autoimmune condition, which is rooted in inflammation, right? So, and although we can't, but I would argue this right now, they're saying we still can't cure autoimmune. We can heal, we can manage, we can put it into remission. I wonder, but we still have to come at this from this inflammation perspective. And it's always, I think you have to think about all the assaults from the environment, the toxins in the environment, the toxins in our food, the poor quality food, the poor quality lifestyle, right? All of that lends itself to more and more inflammation. And so we come at it from, right, every single angle to try to, and it's not about no inflammation. That's impossible. And we need some inflammation to actually have a proper functioning immune system. But it's about taking that load and that burden off of the body, so that then, going back to the gut health, we can absorb, we can digest, we can take the antioxidants we need and then give them to our cells. Our mitochondria function better, our egg quality improves, our sperm quality improves, our immune system becomes more reliable, and there we have it.
You bring up such a good point because I see it so often with my clients, and there's always people in Facebook groups in the vasectomy world that are like, have any of you experienced changes in your cycle since your husband's reversal? Like, what's going on? Am I having problems? And like, to that
Yeah.
point, you are now just placing all of this extra stress and emphasis on something that's changed, and your body is like freaking out, but nobody really talks or teaches us that because we probably don't really foundationally even understand our own cycles.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate kind of just that, you know, explanation because, outside of when I started getting into more holistic stuff, I didn't really realize how integrated each of the different hormones are with one another. So if one's having issues, then the other's going to have
Well,
issues.
that's
And you
it.
go to
I
the
mean, I go
doctor and they're just
crazy
like, oh,
when
your
they're like,
thyroid's
just,
fine.
yeah. They're like, just take progesterone. I'm like, sure, that's a band-aid approach. And that's fine. We can do that. It might get us to the finish line. It is not the answer, though. If progesterone is weak, we got to look at the beginning of the cycle. We got to look at the adrenals. We got to, we got to look at absorption. We got, there's just, but I couldn't agree more. They all, hormones never work in isolation ever. And just taking one is not going to fix the whole picture. Just like Vitex is not the answer for every single person. It drives me insane.
Mm-hmm.
Love it. I'm an herbalist. Love herbs, love them, but use them appropriately for the appropriate case. Don't just take anything. So yeah, it's, I think again, going back to like, it's this holistic whole body approach. And inflammation has become such like a key word. And so is like microbiome and gut health and all these things are very trendy. Bone broth, very trendy. Organ meats, very trendy. But it's really thinking about this like, what am I doing to create a safe environment in my body so that my body feels like it's getting everything it needs and now it has enough resources to grow a human, versus the only thing that we're really being told is know your age. It's just your age, and once that goes down, there's no fixing it. I was just like knee deep in research yesterday. I was just like curious of like how many research papers are out showing that we can in fact improve AMH? Because everybody says this. No, you can't. No. Oh my gosh. That's like research paper after research paper of like, and these AMHs are going up in 3 months' time by 30% with fish oil and CoQ10. You know what I mean? I'm like, why isn't anyone talking about that? Acupuncture, Mayan massage, like improving circulation and blood flow. Whatever that is, like, they're doing Doppler measurements and showing improved circulation and blood flow to the ovaries. Boom, look at that. 30% increase in the AMH. Where's that person then? So I always say to my girls too, the next time someone tells you, oh, you have a 5% chance of getting pregnant because you're 40, or, AMH can never improve. I tell them, I'm like, I would just lovingly, respectfully, can you show me the research? I would love research. I love to read. Can you show me that paper? I want to read it. They don't have it.
No, no. I have several clients that are in that same boat where they're just told like, sorry, you're, you know, old and you better just hurry up and do some kind of
Yeah.
treatments that are alternative. And it's like, to me, it's doing a disservice because if you have not quality to begin with,
Yeah.
if foundationally you don't have, like, nobody wants to build their house on quicksand, right?
Yeah.
So it's like we're being told this information by people that we trust. And I'm very generalizing, obviously, because not
Yeah.
everybody believes this way. But I find so many women, like I had a girl on my podcast, and she was talking about how, sh in her gut, she kept wondering, do I have endometriosis?
Yeah.
And her doctors were like, nope, you're good to go. 5 years, 5 years, she starts seeing a holistic person and like first, goes to acupuncturist, first consult, you have endometriosis. And she was just like riddled with, you know, stuff in her uterus, like, and even had a failed IVF because of
Yeah.
it, like that's just so heartbreaking and heart-wrenching.
Yes.
But
And
what,
the endometriosis thing, I mean, that was half my conversation with this call I was talking about earlier. In the Western medical model, in the reproductive endocrinology model too, they've just decided, well, we just push them to IVF, and IVF bypasses any of these issues. And so it's not something we need to treat. It's not something, it's just like a Hashimoto's. It's not something we need to treat or look into until that thyroid completely fails. It's the same kind of thing. And yet overlooking a huge piece that, yeah, endometriosis is a systemic inflammatory condition. It's impacting multiple organ systems. It's impacting egg quality. 100% it is. It's impacting the immune system. It's not just you need IVF and it will fix it. No, but then what about your long-term health too? This is a systemic condition that needs to be addressed. I mean, what's going around on Instagram right now? I keep seeing these memes of like people holding up posters or whatever, is that there's been more money spent on researching male pattern baldness than on endometriosis. That's it. There just hasn't been an attention there. And stuff, it's so upsetting, so upsetting. And we all know it and we can see it and we see what we're doing is working. And, you see these dramatic shifts that are like kind of unexplainable from the Western side. But to us, it's like, no, I've just basically, like you said, like I've made a stronger foundation. I've allowed for nutrient absorption. I mean, I think that's the number one thing for so many people. But yet they're taking 30 pills, that someone prescribed to them or they read on a blog somewhere or read it, and it's probably a waste of money. You're probably not absorbing half of them. Let's get back to the basics, right? Sleep enough, eat whole foods that know the ingredients of, that they're like literally they don't even have any ingredients. Eat good quality meat, good quality non-toxic bath and beauty products, household products. Sleep, get morning sunlight, spend time in nature. Things will shift dramatically. Drink enough
Yeah.
water,
Yes.
move
When
your
I
body.
started doing all of those
Yeah,
things after, I mean, it was
takes
a
time.
2 year
Yeah,
learning
yeah,
process of figuring all of that stuff out, healing my gut because I've had gut issues my entire life. It wasn't until sort of more recently I took a gut health test to kind of see, like, I'd spent all probably 5 years working on that
yeah.
specifically. And you think, oh, I'm just going to take this probiotic or this digestive enzyme and that's going to solve that. But really, when I looked at my own specific, like, these are the things that are causing you inflammation. One of them was tomatoes, and I
I
eat
know.
them every
Nightshades,
single day.
nightshades.
But like, here I am just like fueling the fire
Hmm.
constantly without actually realizing it. So for me, it was a powerful, and of course, like when I learned this and cut them out, I got pregnant right away. So
I mean, that's what we see
there's
with
that.
my book, The Egg Quality Diet, right? We probably have, that book was in existence in my practice for a decade before I published it, but that's what we do. It's an elimination diet, and I'll tell you, it's like, sure, gluten and dairy and soy can be major triggers for a lot of people, but those are really just quality food. Like, if it's good quality, you should probably actually be fine with it. Very few people, I think 5% of people actually have celiac. Everything else is, non-celiac gluten intolerance. But the number one things I see when I do the elimination diet: nightshades, beans, and nuts. And no one wants to hear it or believe it. They're like, you know, and I'm like, let's just try it. Let's just try it. Eliminate it for a period of time, then reintroduce it. Let's see what happens. But the amount of emails we get from women that have read my book and followed it that say, 90 days into your diet, nothing else worked. And then, like, similar to you, like, I cut out tomatoes because I ate them every day. And yeah, I'm pregnant. Or the eczema that never has been with me my entire life, or my psoriasis that never went away, never went away, or the gas, the bloating, the diarrhea, all the things. And eventually you should be able to heal the gut and then reintroduce those foods. We're not These are not allergies, right? These are intolerances. There's some kind of trigger from the nightshade that's triggering you. And not all nightshades. I'm the same. White potatoes and tomatoes. And I wear a continuous glucose monitor now, because I turned 50 and I just want to, like, stay ahead and not get that menopausal weight gain thing. um and it's fascinating, the things that, like, trigger my eczema, if you will, or aggravate my system, spike my blood sugar as well. They put me up. And so tomatoes are a perfect example. White potatoes, I spike as if I ate like a piece of cake with like loads of icing. It doesn't make any sense, but it does. It's just my body doesn't like those foods. Just and yeah,
I'm
fascinating.
glad that you mentioned that because I really want to start sort of like integrating the continuous glucose monitor more because I think that a lot of people don't, like, you don't understand that you're on a blood sugar roller coaster until you
Yeah.
like really learn how that whole process works. So I
It's
have, obviously, I've had just like gestational diabetes for 3 of my 4 pregnancies. So I have to like write everything down that I'm eating. And I mean, even just not sleeping well, my
yeah.
fasting blood sugar rates are way higher, like probably 10 points higher
Yeah.
when I don't sleep well. And I know this in my head, but like to see it is so powerful. So you think about like people who are trying to conceive and maybe their sleep quality is not that great,
Mhm.
but you also realize like, well, now you just woke up with a higher glucose level, and now your body is spending the entire rest of the day. You probably are going to eat more calories than you
Yeah.
would normally because you're trying to maintain that sort of elevation. So you just kind of set yourself up for
Oh,
failure, more or less, because
totally.
you're just playing catch up on the roller coaster. And I did a whole podcast episode about just how important blood sugar is, but like
Yeah.
I really think it's a powerful tool. And
Same.
even just to notice that like maybe you take a walk after you eat and
Yes.
you can see how that number goes down and you're like, I don't know, I find it super motivating because
I
then it's like
love it.
then you
Same.
have the knowledge and you're equipped to make the decision like, you know what, when I eat this, I notice that I feel like this, and then I feel like junk an hour later. So like maybe I'm not going to eat that anymore.
That's right. That's what I like to do too, even with the elimination diet, like prior to, the continuous glucose monitoring, even just, okay, now introduce things and note how you feel, and then it's typically like it's really good feedback for your life. And you're like, oh, okay, so I can do that. But then the next time I get to make like a choice, I'm going to do that and knowing that it's going to impact X, Y, and Z. But yeah, I see exactly the same things that you just talked about too. And I think about it a lot. They're expensive, but I recommend them to certain clients for sure. I'm like, listen, this would be where I would go, but I also think like, oh, or do we just get a walking mat in our office or wherever we are? And yeah, after every meal, we just walk for 10 minutes. I mean, I did that this morning. I get my little weighted vest on and I do my little even mine will give me an alert. You're rising. You have a 5-minute window to exercise to drop that rise. I can do squats. I could do jumping jacks. I could go for a walk, and I just need like 3 to 5 minutes of that, and it comes right back down. And so there's something to be said um, about just that. Like, but I don't always feel the rise, right? I feel like I want to know it's very interesting. You can't, so wearing the monitor really is one of the best things you can do. I know it's fascinating.
Yeah,
But that's another like inflammatory response, right? So the more I stay, like you said, I'm elevated, I'm out of range, my sugars are high. That is causing like a cortisol jump. Like I see it if I do like a high intensity workout now. I spike so high and it's the whole day I can't come down and then my sleep is off that night. Like I need to not do cardio doesn't really exist for me anymore. Can't. It actually throws me off for probably 2 days. Very fascinating. Weight training though, I'm like stable and lower for like days. It's my body loves it. Walking, same thing. And so, but everybody's body is different. But you think about that of like, oh, is most of what I think for the perimenopause, right? The girls in their 40s that we're treating, or even you're managing your perimenopause, but a huge piece of that is the insulin sensitivity piece. And so, managing that is going to manage our hormones, manage our cortisol, like help our body feel safe to continue to procreate into our mid 40s, like you
hmm
did.
I love all that. And I personally had gone through kind of just my own elimination diet. So I've been in the like health and fitness space, weight loss for 12 years. And so much about what I was teaching or chasing or trying to learn for myself was all about like the
Yeah.
aesthetics, weight loss. And then as I got into my 40s, it was like, what is going on with my hormones? This is terrible. Like things I was doing before is not working anymore, but
Wow.
really understanding sort of like how the blood sugar roller coaster works and even understanding which foods
Hmm.
and how they make me feel because like I love broccoli, it doesn't love me, but even just understanding that, so like maybe I don't eat it
Right.
every day or like the tomato example for one, but it's such a much more empowering place that when you're
Yeah.
like, yes, when I eat this, I don't feel great, it's not good for me, I'm puffy, I feel tired, I'm
Right.
sluggish, than it is just to say like, oh, you need to cut out these foods.
Yeah, I agree. I agree that it feels empowering. It's like I get to have a choice here. And then also similarly, I get to choose, yeah, how I want to feel um, if I have them.
And we've talked a lot about well, a lot of different great things, but even just how, important your gut health is to fertility. If somebody's listening and they suspect that their gut health is causing them issues in that department,
Yeah.
what are maybe the first three steps that you would recommend that they should take to help with that?
Yeah, I mean, I would keep a detailed food diary. It's the first step I do with anybody. What you ate, what time you ate, what you ate, how you felt after, right after, how you felt a few hours later, and then any GI issues. gas, bloating, reflux, constipation, diarrhea, anything. And it really helps me connect the dots. That's probably where I would start. Next thing, I would maybe simultaneously just try to remove anything that comes in a package. Read all your ingredients, anything with seed oils, except for, olive, avocado, coconut. Uh, what else? Butter, ghee. Those aren't really seed oil, but that's all I would eat. And then I would also remove artificial sweeteners, high fructose corn syrup, aspartame, that kind of stuff, just out of the diet. Because I don't even think you have to necessarily like jump on the gluten, dairy, soy free bandwagon. It's more like get back to eating real foods, focus on protein and vegetables, good quality. If you need carbs, okay, again, good quality carbs. So obviously I love like the sweet potatoes and things like that, but even rice or quinoa or a really good quality sourdough bread or something like that. Like look at the ingredients. There should be like 3 ingredients. You should be able to read them all. You know what they are. That's it. That's where I would start. But if you don't track, you're never going to be honest with yourself. So I find that tracking is just so important. And then you really can start to connect the dots. It takes time, or you work with someone who can do that for you. Of course, a good probiotic, but like if you have H. pylori, certain probiotics are going to be worse. You know what I mean? So like, I don't think I'd start there. I think I would really just start with paying attention and, as they always say, shop on the perimeter of the shop, the food store, fruits, vegetables, protein, as plain and simple as you can get it. Look at things like the Whole30. I mean, there's a reason that they work. Obviously I love an elimination diet like I have in the egg quality diet. I think it's pretty doable. It's commitment, but all of a sudden, like I had a call earlier today with someone that I worked with like over a year ago, and she was like, the one thing that's been so solid and steady is like that diet changed my life. I'll never go back to the way I used to be. Like I wake up with energy. I sleep through the night. I poop every day. Like she's like, I didn't do that for the first 30 years of my life. Like now I do that. So I would start there. You could go, right? We use the GI map with all of our patients now in my programs because it's highly insightful. I'm not a functional medicine doctor, but we have one on the team. We use that data. I think it's really informative and helpful. And it completely, like we just had a girl completely restore menstrual cycle. She's been DOR and amenorrheic from like 33 to she's now 40. She's now resumed her cycles. She's not pregnant yet, but she's menstruating, ovulating all on her own, doesn't need hormones anymore to do that. And that was all the gut work. That's all that was. And we layered in that GI map and we learned a lot. Yeah, and then I would also really think about that, like, what else are you consuming kind of conversation when it comes to gut health, because your outer world really. I was read something on Instagram yesterday. It was like he's like considers himself the father of functional medicine, but he said, the things I do to keep myself healthy, even at the age of 79. And one of them was like, I do not spend time around people I don't like. I do not engage in conversations that don't uplift me. Like, and Chinese medicine has always said that, like, it's not just consumption of food, it's like consumption of your world. Like, I don't watch the news, I don't have the TV on, I don't. And it's just, that's me. I work better that way. But to think about that, like, how am I consuming my life? What am I always say to my girls, like, how much of yourself are you giving away versus keeping for you? And that all to us in Chinese medicine really still impacts that digestive element, because it's like the body doesn't have enough resources then to do what it needs to do for itself because it's so busy doing it for everybody else. So that might be more than 3, but those
No,
are my.
that's fantastic because I would say outside of what people are eating and some tweaks that need to be made there, the number one issue I see is people are so stressed out because they're in these Facebook groups and they're comparing themselves to whatever anybody else is doing
That's right.
and thinking that they're far behind, or the doctor gives them, oh, your sperm quality has declined. I mean, I know that because at my
Yeah.
husband's 8-week analysis, it was 0. And I was devastated. And he was like, oh, it's
No,
just inflammation. Like, follow these protocols to reduce your inflammation. And by the next 4 weeks, he was at like 131
wow,
million. So it's like,
that's amazing.
inflammation makes such a
Yeah.
huge difference, but like
And when we
nobody's
talk about
putting,
sperm, it is like the whole, like, you've probably done this and deep dived on this, but like for anybody listening to or listen to a podcast that you've done on this, the current semen analysis parameter is just, it's nonsense. What are they looking at? Like 5 or 10% of the total sperm, and then they're deciding that that's, oh, this is your sperm. No, you need a DNA fragmentation test, like, and he needs to do everything you're doing. That's it. Period. End of story. And if he's not willing to, then go to therapy and work it out. Like, I mean, I say that all the time. I'm like, no, you guys need to work this out together. He needs to be doing this with you, even 80-20, but like, it's the inflammation impacts the sperm, and the more we learn, the more we're like, and of course we always knew sperm is 50% of that embryo, but like, dude, he's part of the placenta, like he's a huge reason for miscarriages, like, oh my goodness, you have to look at that and take it seriously. Yeah.
Yeah, I think people often, when they book a consult with me and I'm asking them about what they eat, and it's very, they kind of gloss over it.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't see the importance, or maybe it's just like me. I don't want to admit that I have a really, before, that I had a not so great diet, but um, that's a hard thing. Anyway, you've covered so much great information that are super powerful and just educational for those of us who've maybe been wandering the earth thinking that we're too old and
I know.
no
And all
hope
your
and
eggs
all
are
that.
bad and you're constantly running out of them. It's such like a wah wah, it's hard. It's hard to fight the system. It is. It's
Mhm.
hard. It's hard. But I would just say, like, if there's hope in your heart, and then you stories like yours, like 44, and you did it, and like, yeah, you obviously, I mean, I would assume if you were thinking your period was late because of perimenopause, you weren't clearly trying or tracking, you just did it.
Yep.
That's amazing that it's like miracles happen all the time, and it's you got to get back to the basics. That's what I would say. And if there's hope in your heart, like, follow that hope, follow it, follow it, follow it.
Well, and even just for me, like the foundations that I created in that 2-year wait and
Yeah.
how it's impacting my now 4-year-old,
Yeah.
where she knows at 4 that she's got to like, she can't eat
Yeah.
carbs naked. Like it has to
Yeah.
be partnered with protein.
I
Like she
love
will
it.
lecture
Yeah.
about people's food choices and all of that. So it makes an impact like generationally, not only just from your DNA perspective, but like what are your kids growing up? What are the foundations that they're going to carry forward? And hopefully it's
Yes.
change future generations so they're not suffering in the same way. So thank you so
You're
much
welcome.
for taking the time to be here. How does one find you? I'll make sure it's in the show notes, but how do people
Yeah.
find you if they want to find your books, find
Yeah, find my
people?
books. So everything's on my website, aimeeraupp.com. And then I'm active on Instagram the most, and I have a pretty big following there, and I really enjoy my community on Instagram. So I think, and everything's just my name, Aimee Raupp, and you can find me.
Perfect. And I'll
And I
make
have
sure
a
that's
yeah.
that's in the show notes. But thank you so much for sharing your
Thank you so much, and
wisdom and
congratulations on this
expertise.
pregnancy.
Thank you. Have like a couple weeks left. That's it.
There you go. Well, yeah, thank you. I appreciate it, and I appreciate the work you do. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me on Conceiving After Vasectomy Reversal. I hope you're feeling encouraged and more hopeful on your journey to growing your family. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who could use a little extra support. I absolutely love reading your reviews. They mean the world to me. Like, seriously, words of affirmation are my love language. So let's stay connected. Find me on Instagram at Conceiving After VR and join our Conceiving After Vasectomy Reversal Facebook community for even more support and encouragement. I believe that God placed the desire for a child on your heart for a reason, and I'm grateful to walk alongside you in this season, to encourage you, and to help you find joy in the journey, trusting that His plan is greater than we could ever imagine.
Thanks for listening.